Coming up on this Wednesday edition of Daybreak, saying it has no intention of speaking to its enemies. North Korea rules out holding talks with the US on human rights or nuclear issues. Washington says Pyongyang's current course is going nowhere. Korean exporters are feeling the strain as the Japanese yen falls to its lowest exchange rate against the Korean won in 6 years. Plus, Americans are casting their ballots in midterm elections in a vote widely being viewed as a referendum on the presidency of Barack Obama. Daybreak begins now. Hello and thanks for joining us. To our viewers around the world, it's 6 a.m. on Wednesday, November 5th here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broome and you're tuned in to Daybreak. Our top story this morning, North Korea has ruled out holding any talks with the United States regarding either its human rights or nuclear issues. A spokesperson from the North Foreign Ministry says Pyongyang will not discuss such topics with enemies that aim to topple a regime, adding that it's only willing to speak with countries that respect its sovereign rights. Watchers say the official statement linking human rights and nuclear issues could be an attempt to influence Washington ahead of a possible UN General Assembly vote on a resolution against North Korea's human rights abuses. US Secretary of State John Kerry says he hopes to work closely with China to make North Korea realize that its current path only leads to a dead end. In a speech at Johns Hopkins University on Tuesday, Kerry said North Korea will only realize security and prosperity when it gives up its nuclear program. The US diplomat also stressed the importance of cooperation with China on non-proliferation. Just last week, Kerry praised Beijing for putting pressure on the North by putting limitations on trade going into the country. China is North Korea's last remaining major ally and key provider of food and fuel supplies. Kerry is scheduled to visit China this week for a range of multi- and bilateral meetings before President Barack Obama visits Beijing for the APEC leaders meeting. And staying with North Korean issues, and South Korea's unification minister has criticized North Korea for backing out of a second round of high-level talks, saying Pyongyang's attitude has broken the faith of inter-Korean agreements. Meeting with dozens of foreign ambassadors in Seoul on Tuesday, Ryu Kil-jae stressed the importance of sticking to commitments to break the vicious cycle of mutual mistrust. He also urged the North to take part in talks without any preconditions. The two Koreas agreed to meet for high-level talks in late October or early November, but the North scrapped them over the flying of anti-Pyongyang leaflets by South Korean activists. Now, in economic news, the Japanese yen has plunged to a 6-year low against the Korean won. This following the Bank of Japan's recent decision to flood the economy with cash by stepping up purchases of government bonds and Japanese stock funds. Now, this situation is taking an extremely heavy toll on Korean exporters, as our Park Ji-won reports.
The Bank of Japan's announcement of expanded monetary stimulus measures last Friday, worth trillions of yen, sent the stock prices of Korea's largest automakers, Hyundai and Kia Motors, slipping by more than 5% on Monday. Additional drops were recorded Tuesday, stripping Hyundai of its staunch second-place position in terms of market capitalization in Korea. Analysts say the fall is largely due to negative expectations that the Korean auto giant will not be able to keep up profitability and stay competitive against its Japanese counterparts.
Taking advantage of enhanced profits due to the weakening yen, Honda and Toyota have been focusing on technological improvements to their vehicles, like boosting fuel efficiency. Korea should keep in mind that the weakening yen will make them more competitive in terms of price and quality of products.
The effects of the weakening yen is not only hitting Korea's big conglomerates, but also sending strong shockwaves to smaller companies. 3 years ago, the yen was trading at more than 1,500 won per 100 yen, but now stands at around 950 won per 100 yen, meaning a 40% decrease in export revenues. According to the Korea Federation of SMEs, the break-even point for a small and medium-sized exporter is 1,014 won per 100 yen. The current 1 yen exchange rate falls way below that.
If the exchange rate falls to around 951 per 100 yen, Korea's export volume will decrease 4.2% and down to 8.8% if the rate falls to 900.
Around half of Korea's top 100 exports fiercely compete with Japanese products, but as the yen weakened with no immediate end in sight, bleak forecasts are weighing heavy on Korea's main exporters. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Now, deregulation is a key part of President Park Geun-hye's administration's plan to boost the domestic economy. And as part of those efforts, the Korean government is easing regulations within its 8 free economic zones in a bid to make them more attractive to investors. Our Kim Ji-yeon reports.
The Korean government is easing regulations on its 8 free economic zones to increase the number of developers and thereby make it less of a pain for businesses to invest there. The Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy says it will lower the minimum requirement of developmental areas from the previous 330 to 200 square meters. The move will also give investors a higher rate of return, as the minimum reinvestment rate is being lowered from 25% to 10% of the profits generated from operating within the zones. Given the benefits, the move is expected to boost the number of private investors, as landowners and their associations will now be able to participate as developers of the zones. The ministry says it plans to raise $20 billion worth of economic benefit from the zones over the next 10 years.
The easing of restrictions is a move toward inducing more investment and development in the free economic zones, particularly in those that are still undeveloped.
There are currently 88 districts within the 8 free economic zones in Korea. A zone in Chungbuk and the East Coast Free Economic Zone were added to the list last year as part of efforts to revive the local economy. But despite a number of measures introduced over the years, more than 40% of the districts are currently undeveloped due to low participation. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Now, it's quite a dire warning, but the government says that Korea's low birth rate and aging society will start putting the country's finances under massive strain in the decades to come unless there are very significant tax hikes. According to a report by the National Assembly Budget Office, the national debt would amount to $13.5 trillion by the year 2060 if there are no additional tax rate increases. That's nearly 1.7 times larger than the country's expected GDP in that year, meaning that in 2060, each citizen's share of this debt would be around $300,000. The report adds the government may not be able to repay its debt through state bonds starting from the year 2033. The number of registered vehicles in Korea has exceeded the 20 million mark for the first time ever, with the number of vehicles on the road doubling in the space of just 17 years. The nation's transport ministry says that as of the end of last month, Korea became the world's 15th and Asia's 4th nation to surpass the 20 million mark. China has the most registered vehicles in Asia, followed by India, Japan and Korea. The Korean government has been collecting related data since 1945, and it took 52 years for Korea to exceed the 10 million mark. Ministry officials say the growth in number of registered vehicles reflects the size and importance of the country's automobile market. Time now for a look through the global headlines we're following on this Wednesday morning here in Seoul. For that, we turn to Eunice Kim, standing by at the news centre. Hello there, Eunice.
Good morning to you, Mark. The U.S. midterm elections are well underway in a vote that is widely being viewed as a referendum on President Barack Obama. The U.S. leader has been bogged down by some of his lowest approval figures, remaining in the lower 40% range despite recent gains in the economy. Tight races are being observed in decisive states such as Iowa, Colorado, and New Hampshire. The results of Tuesday's polls would set the tone for the country's presidential elections slated in 2 years' time in 2016. Many analysts are predicting a victory for the Republicans, who have waged an expensive $4 billion campaign for the biggest prize poised to be a majority control of the Senate. About a third of the seats there will be determined in the midterm elections. Low voter sentiment and low voter turnout could also help the conservatives. It could be a while before complete results are known, though. The states of Georgia and Louisiana could see runoff elections if no candidate wins more than 50% of the votes. Thai police say they have arrested the co-founder of Pirate Bay as he was attempting to cross into Thailand from neighboring Laos. Known to hackers as Tiamo, the 36-year-old was on the run while out on bail following a conviction in a Swedish court for aiding copyright infringement 5 years ago. Hans Fredrik Leinart Neij helped start the Swedish file-sharing website, which helps users link to pirated content on the World Wide Web. And Switzerland has been rocked by a pair of shootings that left 5 people dead. 3 bodies were found on Monday in the Alps town of Winterschwil and was characterized by local media as a crime of passion. Bern police said the shooter was one of the 2 men who died. The third person killed near a train station was a woman. Hours later, in an apparently unrelated strike, another woman was shot dead in an apartment in the northern city of Basel. The regional public prosecutor's office said the suspect is believed to have moved on to shoot a man and a woman in a nearby flat before being arrested that night. And in a first for the reclusive state, North Korea has hosted its first fine art exhibit at its embassy in the United Kingdom. The Telegraph reports Pyongyang sent a group of 4 artists to London to capture scenes of the city over a period of 2 days. It said the men came from the country's elite Mansudae studio, a collective of artists tasked with creating portraits of leader Kim Jong-un and his family. The exhibit is open to the public from Tuesday through Friday this week.
We start before the sun rises to bring you the latest stories out of Korea. We also lead the way with important global coverage. Stay on the pulse of what is happening with Daybreak.
Right, well, there are over 200 countries in the world, and a new survey has found that Korea is the 25th best country to live in the world. This is according to a British think tank whose latest index notes Korea's good economy and education. But the report also notes that Korea would be well served to learn from countries like Norway and Switzerland in other areas, particularly in the area of welfare. Our Gwon-soa reports.
South Korea is the 25th most prosperous country out of 142 countries around the world, according to a Prosperity Index report released by the British-based Legatum Institute. This year's ranking is a notch higher than last year. Korea's best ranking was 24th in 2011. Norway topped the list for the 6th consecutive year. It was followed by Switzerland and New Zealand. The 3 most prosperous Asian countries are Singapore, Japan, and Hong Kong. The report says South Korea is the 5th best Asian country to live in. African nations filled out the majority of the bottom spots, with the Central African Republic propping up the rest. While GDP is usually the most common way to assess a country's prosperity level, the Legatum report says its definition of prosperity is more than, quote, just the accumulation of material wealth. That's why the institute measures countries by 8 categories. Korea performs strongly in economy and education, ranking 9th and 15th respectively. But the personal freedom and social capital divisions are weak.
Korea remains stuck in the mid-20 level because of its overall welfare situation. In terms of day-to-day welfare, Korea is still an awfully long way behind countries like Norway and Switzerland. If we do not make changes there, Korea seen from the outside may be a country seen as a nice place to visit, but not one of the best to live in.
But analysts are optimistic that the government's latest efforts to improve its welfare policies could boost Korea's position on the Prosperity Index list in the coming years. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
Now, despite SOA's report there that a British-based institute found that Korea is the 5th best Asian country to live in, unfortunately, a great deal of children living here in Korea may beg to have a different opinion. A nationwide survey of about 4,000 households with children under the age of 18 found that Korean children and teenagers were the least satisfied with their lives among OECD member states. Korea scored just over 60 points on a scale of 100. And that's far, far behind the top spot. The Netherlands, they came in first at 94.2 points. Netherlands followed by Iceland and Finland. Korea's welfare ministry says the dissatisfaction stems from extreme pressure to do very well in school, as well as bullying, violence and internet addiction. And on a similar theme, calls are growing for a major shake-up of Korea's education system to better equip students for the 21st century. At a special forum in Seoul on Tuesday, President Park Geun-hye says there needs to be a greater focus on creativity and innovation in the nation's schools. Our Chae Yu-san reports.
President Park Geun-hye at a symposium co-organized by Seoul and the World Bank on Tuesday said the time has come for the Korean education system to transform in the face of new challenges in the 21st century. The president referred to her talks with World Bank President Kim Yong-kim last year when they agreed that innovation and creativity are the foundation of sustainable growth and that it's education that can foster such talents at the center of a creative economy.
저는 우리 교육이 혁신을 이루어낼 창의적인 아이디어와 도전 정신을 키워내는 원천이 되어야 한다고 생각합니다. 개개인의 잠재된 능력을 최대한 끌어올려서 아이디어와 열정으로 가득한 융합 인재를 길러내는 창의 인재 양성 교육으로 변해야 합니다.
Korea recently participated in the UN Global Education First Initiative and joined the Global Partnership for Education in its bid to play a more active role in international efforts to enhance the quality of education in the developing world.
그동안 축적해온 교육의 노하우에 선진국의 우수 사례를 접목하고 이제까지의 교육 패러다임을 뛰어넘는 행복교육, 창의교육을 실현해서 우리 교육의 발전은 물론 세계 교육의 발전에도 기여해 나가기를 기대하고 있습니다.
The World Bank president also at the event said Korea's GDP could annually expand 0.6% for 20 years if the country narrows the gap between male and female workforce participation. He then called on Koreans to break down the social and economic hierarchies that often prevent women and youth from unleashing their potential. Chae Yu-san, Arirang News.
And a good Wednesday morning to you all as we kick things off in the PGA, where President Park Geun-hye accepted an invitation to become an honorary chairman of the President's Cup 2015 on Tuesday. With the President's Cup coming to Korea for the first time ever next year, international team vice captain Chae Kyung-ju and PGA Commissioner Tim Fincham, along with the captains of the international and U.S. team Nick Price and Jay Haas, were invited to the Cheongwade. And with that, President Park Geun-hye accepted the invitation to become the honorary chairman of the President's Cup 2015, becoming just the second woman to accept the invitation since Australian Prime Minister Julia Gillard. Meanwhile, the event will take place from October 8th to the 11th next year. And speaking of honorary roles, on Tuesday, figure queen Kim Yeon-ah was officially named the 6th Goodwill Ambassador for the upcoming 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Olympics, with the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics Organizing Committee announcing that the figure queen will become the latest honorary ambassador last week. She was introduced to the media officially on Tuesday. The 24-year-old, who retired from the sport after the 2014 Sochi Winter Games, said it's an honor to be able to contribute to the organizing of the Winter Games in Korea and that she'll do all she can to set up the best environment for competition. The 2010 Vancouver gold medalist also worked with the bidding committee 3 years ago and helped Pyeongchang win the rights to the Winter Olympics. All right, moving over to the 2014 Korean Series, which kicked off on Tuesday night with Game 1 of the best-of-7 series between the defending champions Samsung Lions and the Nexen Heroes. And going into the game here, top of the 30, Vinny Rotino, that's an RBI double as Sung Won-chang scores from third, and it's 1-0 Nexen. Shortly after, Kang Jong-ho's sac fly to center field scores Vinny Rotino, and it's 2-0. However, the bottom of the inning, Yamiako Navarro with the man on got a center field home run here. We're back to square one with the game tied 2-2. Stays at well until the top of the 8th inning. Kang Jong-ho driven to deep left, got a 2-run shot, and Nexen takes the lead again 4-2. And with that, Son Seung-la coming in for the save here in the 9th inning. Nexen takes game 1, 4-2. And now staying in baseball, 2 KBO players are expected to be posted for the majors this offseason as Nexen's Kang Jong-ho and SK's Kim Kwang-hyun have been in the spotlight. But how do the experts rank them amongst the available free agents for the 2015 MLB season? Well, according to Jeff Passan of Yahoo Sports, who ranks the top free agents each year, ranked Kang Jong-ho at 33rd and Kim Kwang-hyun at 116th out of 165 free agents listed this year. Now, Passan questioned Kang Jong-ho's ability to play shortstop and hit for power at a major league level, while he was skeptical of Kim Kwang-hyun's talent to be a starter in the major leagues. And now moving over to football this time, where Bayer Leverkusen faced off against Zenit St. Petersburg in Group C Champions League match earlier today as sensational Son Heung-min scored once in the 68th minute and another 5 minutes later, helping his club win 2-1 and hold on to their first place lead in Group C. And with that, we're going to finish things off with more football here. Questions still remain on the 2022 Qatar World Cup and whether or not it's plausible to have the World Cup in the nation. And the latest news, there's a chance that the 2022 World Cup might take place in winter. Now, with FIFA recently holding a meeting in regards to the 2022 World Cup, FIFA's Secretary General Jerome Valcke stated that the event might be moved to either January to February or November to December. But with the Winter Olympics taking place usually at the beginning of February, the IOC might be against the idea, while UEFA seems to be against the idea of having it at the end of the year, with major Champions League matches scheduled at the time. Now, all options still remain open, with many even asking for a new host nation. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day, and see you guys again for your sports news.
Good morning. Well, typical late autumn weather is in store today. Single-digit morning lows will jump into upper teens across much of the country. So beware of big temperature gaps and dress accordingly before heading out. Well, we'll kick off the day under lots of sunshine and it should stay sunny for the morning hours. Then as we head into the afternoon, plenty of sun will be mixed with a bit of clouds, and dry weather continues as the dry weather advisory remains in effect here in the capital. With that in mind, let's take a closer look at the readings for today. Now, the daily low in Seoul started out at 7, then the daytime high in the capital and Daegu will top out at 19, while Gwangju and Busan will peak at 18 and 20 respectively. Now on to other regions. Jeju Island will be getting up to 18 later on, and Daejeon and Dokdo will see highs of 17, while Mount Keungang only reaches at 7. Well, that's all for Korea, and here's the international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, that's going to do it from us for now. Korea Today is coming up at 7 a.m. Korea time. That's in about half an hour's time. Thanks ever so much for watching. I'll be back at 10 a.m. Korea time. Until then, goodbye.